Welcome to our AMA with Arbitrum on Twitter Space. It's great to be here today. This is Ece from Kyber Network. Also, many of you probably know, but let me repeat, we have a present for you. 10 people will win 50 USD worth of KNC, and it's so easy to win. I will choose from the questions written under the tweet that we share the AMA announcements with you on Twitter. Please do not forget to follow us and meet other conditions. You have your time until the end of AMA, so join in and tweet your questions. I will choose 5 questions, that means 5 lucky winners from Twitter. And also, another 5 lucky winners will win KNC just for participating in this AMA. We will choose from among active participants. Stay with us until the end of the AMA. This is our first Twitter Ask Me Anything event with Arbitrum, so excited. Daniel and Hunter with us today from the Arbitrum team. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Arbitrum is a great project. Basically, I can say Arbitrum is a layer 2 solution designed to improve the capabilities of Ethereum smart contracts, boosting its speed and scalability while adding privacy features. Of course, we will learn more details from the team soon. And KyberSwap works on Arbitrum network as well as 10 blockchains, so that means you can swap your tokens and add liquidity with Kyber network on Arbitrum easily. So let's hear from Daniel and Hunter. Thanks again for being here. Can you mention about yourself and your role in Arbitrum? We would love to know more about you.
So I can get started. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
So yeah, my name's Daniel. I do sort of software engineering and technical research at Offchain Labs, which is the company behind Arbitrum. Increasingly, we just say we work for Arbitrum because that's easier. You want to give an intro, Hunter?
Yeah. I'm the Hunter, obviously the community manager here at Octane Labs. As Daniel said, Arbitrum, pretty much. That's what everyone knows us as. And yeah, focus mainly on the Discord community stuff, as well as any on-chain degen activities. I always like to say.
Thank you. So let's continue with the questions. So Daniel, can you tell us what is Arbitrum? Can you briefly explain to our users in simple terms, and how can that benefit our users in terms of trading experience and, of course, security?
Sure. So as you said, Arbitrum is a layer 2 solution. I guess to users, maybe the absolute most simple way to describe it is if you're a user of anything on Ethereum, you've probably experienced that sometimes, or arguably all of the time, Ethereum is fairly expensive and often very slow. So Arbitrum is a solution to fix those two things, to give you sort of a nicer experience in terms of low fees and better latency. To a slightly more sophisticated user, I might explain that Arbitrum it's a blockchain. You can sort of interact with it the way you would, in many ways, the way you would a layer 1 blockchain, but instead of sort of having its own security model, it's getting security directly from Ethereum itself. So it sort of operates as this kind of extension of Ethereum that runs on top of Ethereum or kind of inside of Ethereum, depending on how you want to look at it. It's getting security from it, and as using it, you're both deriving security from Ethereum and contributing to the Ethereum security model. So it's still sort of within that ecosystem. And again, we sort of focus on strong compatibility with Ethereum itself, both on the sort of smart contract level all the way up to the tooling developer experience level. Anything you want to add there, Hunter? I feel like that was 101.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was really great. So, how would you explain the meaning of layer 2 scaling solutions for beginners? Probably you are the best person to explain that.
Sure. Yeah, layer 2. So people, there's no one canonical resource that defines these terms for us. So people use the term slightly differently. I can explain how we think of the term, or how I think of what the term means. But basically, layer 2 is, again, ultimately, it starts with this problem of scalability. Blockchains kind of, at least like 101 style blockchains, like the current state of Ethereum, like Bitcoin, are cool in a lot of ways, but have this very glaring limitation and this glaring bottleneck, which is basically everyone who's running the software has to sort of recreate all of the work that's done. So if you transact on an application like KyberSwap on layer 1, every sort of layer 1 node on Ethereum has to sort of like recreate the same work of your transaction. So I define layer twos are sort of any way to mitigate that limitation, which translates to, again, lower fees and or faster transactions. But to do so without introducing any new trust assumptions or any new security assumptions. So you want to sort of, to be a layer two, you want to be able to claim that you have essentially the same security model as using the base layer itself. In this case, Ethereum. I say essentially because there's all sorts of little nitpicks you could give there, and of course, it's not going to be exactly as secure. But in principle, that's the goal.
Wow, thank you so much. And I saw a Twitter question right now, which asked the questions almost exactly I would like to ask now. That means I think we have choose our first winner. It's from Lisa. I saw Lisa here among the participants too. Congrats. She asks about the meaning of Arbitrum name. And she said also, could you share with us about the story that gave your team the inspiration and motivation to build and develop Arbitrum? My question was almost the same. I was about to ask the meaning of Arbitrum name, and if you can tell us how did Arbitrum get started, what motivated your team to start this project, that will be perfect.
Sure. So the Arbitrum name, the probably most frequent misconceptions or misassumptions, people think of arbitrage, which it doesn't stand for. They think of arbitrary, which it obviously doesn't stand for.
Exactly.
Although I guess maybe you could make that work for a certain reason. But the real the root of the term was arbitration, and that's basically because at its core, the Arbitrum protocol is an interactive fraud proof scheme, where you can kind of handle smart contracts in this way, where again, instead of just sort of executing smart contracts, instead of sort of executing them globally on this base layer, you can sort of do this thing where you make claims about them, and then if someone disputes them, you do this arbitration process. So that's kind of the root of the term. The origin story of Arbitrum goes back to like 2014, I think, maybe 2015. I've been with Arbitrum about 2 years now. The three founders, Ed, Harry, and Stephen, were at Princeton, and we're kind of Ed and Stephen have published a cryptocurrency textbook in like 2013. Some of these years might be off by a few, but they've sort of been thinking about the scaling problem for a while, and they proposed kind of early on the sort of a prototypical version of Arbitrum that wasn't quite optimistic rollup, but had a lot of the other core things there. If you go back, I think to the beginning of 2015, they had sort of talked about this idea, and they had a group of students give a presentation about Arbitrum. I think the like YouTube timestamp there is early 2015. It's kind of a trip to watch because you can see sort of how much is actually there and how much they're already thinking about. But basically, it was still theoretical then, in large part because Ethereum didn't exist yet. But then fast forward, Ethereum exists, Ethereum runs into the scaling bottleneck, and then they kind of, resuscitated this idea, formed a company. And then eventually, as, the term optimistic rollup caught on, that sort of became, you can sort of take the Arbitrum protocol and do it in rollup form, which basically just means you're using Ethereum for data, and then doing the same Arbitrum fraud proof stuff. Which means it again, you can sort of really eliminate any trust assumptions. So anyway, that's kind of the backstory there. It's sort of weird talking about the founders when they're not here, like they're mythical creatures.
I think Harry's actually in the crowd, by the way.
Oh, is he? Okay, good. Then he can. I'll take his not correcting me, as I got all those details right. There he is. Yeah. Okay. He gives
Wow,
me
so
a sign.
cool story. Thank you so much. And Daniel, can you tell us what motivated the team to collaborate with KyberSwap too?
Sure. You want to take this one, Hunter? I've been yapping a bit.
Yeah. No problem at all. I mean, I would say like any type of application that can make the user experience better is always a plus, especially on Arbitrum. And the one thing that a lot of people still like doing, which I don't know, I guess I kind of forgot about because NFTs are kind of the biggest thing now, is like trading, like one of the most obvious things, swapping tokens, and you're gonna need applications that are able to not only sustain like a good amount of volume when you're trading, but also like have it efficient. So I know this. You may ask, you may have something similar, and I may answer something similar, coming up soon. But a Kyber swapper or a Kyber user, whatever you call your users, I would say Kyber swapper is probably a good name for your users.
Oh, that's a cool one. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think what they can really expect from using kind of KyberSwap on Arbitrum is just like instant transactions, like near instant transactions. At least that's what it feels like, and very very cheap fees. Then obviously having the ability for KyberSwap to aggregate multiple dexes is very important, so that there's less liquidity fragmentation. Like, I'm pretty sure you guys, if I remember correctly, you aggregate Sushi, Balancer, Curve, and I think the XDAO or Swapper is what it's called. So a good amount of exchanges there that are being kind of aggregated on KyberSwap on the Arbitrum network. So it definitely makes for a better trading experience than rather than just using one DEX and potentially missing out on that added, I guess you could say, liquidity. No one wants any slippage in their trade, so it definitely makes sense.
Thank you, Hunter. So, what can KyberSwap users expect from Arbitrum? Can you give us a brief? Also, how do you think KyberSwap and Arbitrum will progress together? It is one of the most asked questions.
Right. Yeah, and I think the best answer here is really just it's funny, like we talk to projects all the time, and it's definitely one of the I think biggest value adds being on Arbitrum is just how amazing the entire ecosystem is. And like when I say that, I mean like not only just from like the product standpoint, where like we have obviously all these teams, including KyberSwap, building the great products on Arbitrum, but it's also interacting with each other, where like the magic really happens. So for you guys, obviously, it would be really just like not so much actually doing collaborations with us, believe it or not. It's more so doing collaborations with the ecosystem. So like it'd be adding more dexes essentially. Like I think, for example, like adding Uni would be awesome because that's obviously like another one of the biggest dexes in Arbitrum. And any of the other ones that just again make that trading experience for KyberSwap users on Arbitrum more seamless, less slippage, and just a better experience to trade in general. Because that's what's needed pretty much.
Wow, thank you. And also, we really want to learn about growth targets, roadmap, and future plans of Arbitrum. Can you share a little bit with us?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of roadmap, the sort of next and kind of the current big thing is this upgrade we've been planning that we call Nitro. Um, and I guess the maybe very short version in terms of what with this upgrade, what users can expect is lower fees. And what developers can expect is sort of a nicer experience in terms of working with a system that's closer, even closer to what they're used to with working on Ethereum, sort of stronger Ethereum compatibility. In terms of how that works is sort of a longer story, but I guess the shortest version I can give there is the sort of layer two system. Right now, we sort of have our own virtual machine, our own sort of our own system that's running on layer two, that's custom made from layer two. We'll be able to swap that in essentially with the Ethereum software itself, or more specifically, a fork of the Ethereum software designed for layer two, and that will give us all sorts of benefits. Underneath that, which Arbitrum still has the same basic architecture, same basic principles. So anyway, we're calling that Nitro. We've put a little information out about it, but you can expect a lot more soon. And that's kind of the current all hands on deck thing that we're gearing up towards. In terms of bigger picture, and I'm thinking mostly the tech roadmap, of course, but the probably the next most like exciting and interesting technical update we want to do is this project of decentralizing the sequencer. The sequencer is this one part of the system that kind of lets us get these, in very short term, fast confirmations for transactions before you get the full security. And it's currently centralized. Even in its centralized form, the system is still kind of trustless, which is slightly counterintuitive, but I stand by that. But it's still, ideally, we want to decentralize it, and a lot of this has to do with making sure that no one party can do things like front run or reorder. So we want to be very sort of as resistant to front running and MEV extraction as possible. And this decentralizing the sequencer project is going to be part of that. So that's more that's another step. It involves some kind of cutting edge research, and there'll be sort of a fair ordering consensus algorithm that hasn't really been implemented yet. So that's an exciting thing. but anyway, I think bigger picture in terms of roadmap, other than those two things, there's just like thinking more broadly and generally about going into sort of our fully decentralized mode. We still sort of have guardrails and safety precautions in place, as does every other layer two that's live on mainnet. At least every other layer two that's getting usage. Yeah, I mean, we definitely, the goal is decentralization, the goal is trust minimization. So I think that's the most important thing is sort of progressively decentralizing and moving towards that goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I can also add actually on the more the partnership, it's non-techy side in terms of future plans and whatnot. I think the main keyword here is going to be growth. So when we first launched back in August, I mean, our first kind of went public back in August. We had the DeFi ecosystem like very very kind of like not really built out at that point, but like we had a great base for it. And as time went on, I mean, up until this point, you can pretty much use any DeFi app on Ethereum that you would use on Ethereum on Arbitrum for the most part. Plus, obviously, some of the great additions that we have now. But I think what we're really trying to focus a lot of our efforts on nowadays is not only making sure that the NFT/GameFi ecosystem on Arbitrum is being built out, because that's definitely like one area it's really really thriving on Arbitrum right now. If you haven't used any of the dApps there yet, but it's also just making sure that user experience, getting on Arbitrum, getting off Arbitrum, as well as just being on Arbitrum in general is good. So like that includes centralized exchange listings. We already have Binance, FTX, Wobi, any of those classic exchanges. You're already able to deposit and withdraw directly in and out of Arbitrum. So that's obviously awesome, because bridging obviously is a hassle, and we don't want we don't really you never really want like the end user to actually have to do that, frankly. If you ask me, of course. And of course, just making sure that users on Arbitrum feel like there are more people coming. It's a growing ecosystem, and obviously by far like the biggest L2. And we definitely have not stopped growing. That's for sure. Our partnership team is a beast, as well as our engineering team. So shout out to Danny G and the rest of the partnership team.
Your answers were great. Thank you so much. And my next question is actually, Arbitrum launched relatively recently, we can say that, but it is already growing very quickly in terms of popularity and use. Do you see this as a sign that Arbitrum is catching up with the trends and meeting the needs in the world of cryptocurrency technologies? What do you say about this?
Yes, I think so. I think one of the nice things about the position we're in is, again, since we're sort of since the technology is focused on compatibility with Ethereum, we sort of like when it comes to a blockchain, you realize, as you said, we launched, it was really just late August, early September, so it hasn't been that many months, which is kind of wild. But you realize just sort of how much goes into that. There's all these different things, from applications to infrastructure to UX considerations. Like, it requires all this work from a lot of different people for this ecosystem to work. And one of the nice things about the position we're in is, again, we can sort of inherit a lot of this stuff directly from Ethereum, because we're sort of directly compatible with so much stuff on Ethereum. So a lot of the things like developer tooling, things like indexing tools, infrastructure, all this stuff, we either get it for free out of the box, or it's sort of very easy for us to incorporate on the Arbitrum side. So that's all to say that as the trends of Ethereum continue, as certain applications, certain types of applications catch on and things like that, it's a fairly trivial step to say let's do these things on layer 2. So I think we're just sort of naturally positioned to follow where Ethereum goes, including on the most technical levels. We're even thinking about, as some of the let's just say, as some of the potential upgrades to Ethereum itself go on, we're thinking about how we can incorporate like layer 2 versions of those. That's pretty vague, but I'll leave it at that. But yeah, no, I think it's obviously we're really excited to see how fast things have progressed, and to see where they go.
Yeah, and I can also actually chime in there a little bit on the like kind of our kind of view, at least not our view, but like how people view us in terms of like, the whole kind of cross-chain ecosystem. Because I think for a while, people were kind of just, and I mean, even today, frankly, people are kind of just comparing L2s to L2s and L1s to L1s. When frankly, it's not really it's not really like a layer comparison that people should be making. It's frankly, it really is a chain comparison. So just the fact that you can transact on Arbitrum, and I'm just going to put an example out there. For example, like Arbitrum versus Solana versus, you have the Optimisms of the world, the Polygons. Um, not to say that we're all competitors in a way, but I think at some point there's definitely going to have to be a point where people realize that you can't just compare layer twos to layer twos and layer ones to layer ones. Like, we're technically all kind of in the same bucket of just wanting to have users use our dApps and ecosystem and just be on there. And whether you're on a layer two or a layer one, um, you still need to be on just one of them, or you can have obviously assets on both, but still, uh, it's not as isolated as I think it once was. Maybe last year. There's a reason why this year is called L222. It is a meme, but it's also reality.
Thank you so much. And the last question from my side is, two main challenges of DeFi is accessibility and scalability, right? And how is Arbitrum able to meet this challenge? You mentioned, but can you mention a little bit more for us?
Yeah, of course. So, in terms of like accessibility, it's kind of like we mentioned before in terms of like what's part of our growth plan. It's just trying to get as many people onboarded to a layer two as much as possible, which means centralized exchange integrations, which is pretty much where all the money kind of comes from in the first place, and then just more on ramps, allowing people to kind of just onboard themselves directly into Arbitrum. 'Cause bridging obviously is like kind of one added step to kind of coming onto Arbitrum, but you kind of have the issue of some people kind of going from Ethereum to Arbitrum, in which case they'll have to incur like usually a relatively high gas fee because they're starting on Ethereum in the first place. Um, but even just having that extra added step, I'm sure like everyone in this call knows, as soon as you like make things even like a little bit more complicated, I guess, than it has to be, people just get turned off. And I guess the great part is that we've had, again, as I mentioned, like all these different centralized exchange integrations. I think up to 10 at this point. And up until now, a lot of people have actually been using our bridge, and we are actually updating it as we speak. So stay tuned for that. And they've been fine with it. Obviously, I think Binance was probably like one of the biggest things that kind of happened. I think because we've seen a lot of kind of capital move from there over to Arbitrum like directly. I think so much so that like their withdrawal thing is like suspended half the time because they're like running out of running out of Arbitrum ETH to bridge over, which is kind of a good sign. But in terms of accessibility, that's definitely like one of the main things we want to make sure people are kind of okay with just kind of coming to Arbitrum straight away and not having them deal with that kind of friction in between. But then in terms of scalability, I don't know if Daniel, I don't know if you want to kind of talk about that, but yeah, no, I think just yeah, go ahead. If you want. See, you unmuting and muting again. So
Sorry, sorry, my app's being funky, but I think I'm unmuted now. Yes. No, I think that's what you said there is sort of the key thing in terms of accessibility and things like that. Yeah, I mean, not to repeat what Hunter said, but basically, like the whatever sort of accessibility or UX challenges exist in the crypto space generally, right? Arbitrum is a part of. So we're all kind of working towards a similar goal. The sort of new one that is inevitably introduced by layer two is there is some notion of having your funds, either on layer one or layer two, right? And currently, what that looks like is bridging, and this is one of those things where, on the one hand, we're sort of focused on this core protocol. We're focused on making it easy for developers to use and for other developers to build applications on top of. So some of this stuff is like part of the ecosystem, part of the application world. We're happy to just sort of see what people come up with, but obviously, it's very important to us that users have a nice experience. I think like the developments here so far have been, first of all, this world of bridges has really just, it's kind of exploded and taken off. So if in terms of moving funds between chains, there's all of these different applications with different security models, different UX trade offs and things like that emerging, and that's good. In some sense, it also kind of can make things even more confusing, right? Because now you're like, okay, not only am I using Ethereum and Arbitrum and figuring out where my Ether is, I have to sort of think about which bridge did I use to get from one place to another, and does that affect anything else? Blah blah blah. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're thinking about, and like I said, a lot of this kind of comes down to parts of the ecosystem at large that we don't have direct control over. But I think other than more bridges emerging, there's applications directly using bridges and sort of figuring out UX patterns that make sense. And then there's things like wallets being more sort of multi-chain friendly, layer 2 friendly, where more of this can be abstracted away. Even block explorers, I've sort of this is one of my sort of um, like one of the things that I like to say, not to beat a dead horse, but is that a lot of these things, were we redesigning them now, they would just look very different than they do. In other words, a lot of the decisions, the design patterns, the UX considerations were sort of built with a single layer, namely Ethereum, in mind. And now we're sort of in this ad hoc Frankenstein way, adding on features to support multiple layers. I should say I'm not a UX person at all, so take all of this with skepticism and a grain of salt. But that's sort of what I see. So I think yeah, just sort of thinking about that, talking to teams like wallets and explorers, and facilitating ways of making it more of like a multi-chain or L2 native ecosystem as opposed to an L1 ecosystem with some L2 stuff tacked on after the fact, is sort of one of the next big projects. There was a part of that question I think that we didn't answer, but I think we answered the first part thoroughly.
I mean, this is the scalability part. Optimistic roll-up.
Oh,
shows the answer.
Yes, I mean scalability. Yeah, right. Scalability. Obviously it's pretty broad. The whole project of what we're doing is scalability. So there's a lot of things we could say here. I guess what I can say is that the thing one thing that I think we just need to keep communicating, and maybe we could communicate this better, is when it comes to scalability solutions in the broadest sense, there will always be a broad spectrum of options, and there'll be trade-offs there. And currently, sort of Arbitrum Rollup or Arbitrum One or mainnet chain, with this design, we're sort of leaning heavily on the side of decentralization. It's sort of the starting point. We say the bare minimum is, again, we don't have new trust assumptions introduced. Okay, how can we optimize from there? And I think within that category, we're doing a good job. But ultimately that decentralization and that security you are going to have to pay for, literally. Like that will translate to higher fees. In the other absolute extreme of a quote unquote scalable system, I mean, if you literally don't care about decentralization at all, you can use centralized systems. Those have existed for a while. Those will have lower fees than rollups. And I think that, that will just be the case down the line. And then of course there's all this middle ground. So I think just, I guess what I'm saying is, part of the scalability challenge is communicating that, is making sure that developers and users understand what the trade-offs are, understand sort of when they really need high security and when it's worth it to pay for. And equally important, when maybe you have an application that doesn't need this level of high security, in which case, why spend all this extra money? Why spend all this extra money paying for it? So yeah, there's a spectrum of solutions out there. Obviously, the one that we're most excited about and interested in is the one that just, extends Ethereum security itself, like Arbitrum Rollup. But there's other stuff out there. We're going to be offering, we posted about one of these sort of middle ground solutions that we're going to be offering, where you can sort of use the Arbitrum technology to create what we call any trust chains, which is sort of in the kind of federated sidechain category of things, though it has some nice properties. So less, not trustless the way Rollup is, not totally decentralized the way Rollup is, but also not a strictly centralized thing. With the benefit being that you can have lower fees. So yeah, I mean, I think we're already at this point when the technology is really catching up. We can see it live on mainnet, and now the challenge is communicating to users what level of security, what level of fees do you need, and when. That's sort of where I think we're at.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Hunter. Now I will ask you some questions from Twitter. Did you take a look and choose questions, or is the honor all mine? I saw great questions.
Yeah, you can go ahead and pick whichever ones.
Okay, thank you. So I saw questions, and please be free to give short answers too, if you want to. I saw questions about what has Arbitrum accomplished. What is your focus in the short term? What would you say if someone asked you these questions? Someone was not familiar with Arbitrum. What would you say? What Arbitrum has accomplished? It's a hard word.
So it's a very interesting question. I think probably Daniel, you can speak more on the tech side. I think from the from like I guess like a user perspective, I guess some easy metrics to kind of spit out. We have like roughly over 300 dApps already deployed on Arbitrum. So when we say like a fully fledged ecosystem in pretty much like a matter of months, we really mean that. As well as, I think, don't quote me on it, I think we have roughly 3 to 4 billion in TVL. Pretty sure we're actually around 4 billion in TVL. On the Arbitrum chain itself. So like although we've been out, as I mentioned, like, for only like a couple of months to the public, we do have a relatively like seasoned ecosystem. But the important thing is that, it's not stopping there. And the tech obviously kind of speaks volumes in that. And Daniel can kind of speak on that.
Yeah, well, I think I would just add, in terms of an add-on, an addendum to the accomplishments. I think an important piece of that I think we're really proud of is we've gotten to this point, 6 months in, with all the metrics that Hunter mentioned, and so far we've done it without any sort of grants program, without any token. In other words, we aren't sort of directly. We're not sort of in any way directly paying or incentivizing projects to build on Arbitrum or incentivizing users to get on Arbitrum. It really has been organic. Obviously, we do promotion, we cross market with teams, but no, we haven't been throwing money at them. So I think that's both. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool and exciting to just again see this ecosystem merge, and I think and hope that for the crypto world at large, particularly the layer 2 world in general, even outside of Arbitrum, it sort of sends a valuable and positive message, which is, this technology has real demand, and there are users who actually want to use it, and yeah, it isn't just a matter of sort of trying to, it doesn't require this sort of circular thing of incentivizing people just to use your own application. So yeah, I think that in terms of accomplishments, I think in terms of net results anyway, that's to me really, really cool and exciting. And then, yeah, I don't know, in terms of the tech, I just worry about babbling too long. But I will say, as someone who's been in the layer 2 kind of research and development space for a while, yeah, I do think Arbitrum going live on mainnet, feature complete, fully implemented. Like I said, still some sort of trusted guardrails on top of that. But the fact, that's a very big milestone, I think, for the layer 2 space. It's really the first true layer 2 that's a roll up, especially with generalized smart contracts like this. So yeah, I think it's a I think it's a technical achievement. I say that less patting myself on the back than the founders and those who are sort of designing this for years. But I guess slight patting myself on the back. I don't know.
It's fine. It's okay. We'll let you have
it. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you. And there's a lot of questions about NFTs. Can we build NFT on top of Arbitrum? Do you have a product for that, or are you planning to build something about NFTs on Arbitrum?
So I think, so I guess that's kind of like a broad question. So I can kind of answer it in like a couple of different ways. I'm sure Daniel can speak to it a little bit as well. So, okay, can you build NFTs on Arbitrum? That is a resounding yes. There are actually a ton of NFTs already on Arbitrum, including some of the I think like some of the classics such as the Small Brains, the DMX Blueberries, some of the guys from the NFT Alliance. There's already a bunch of NFTs on Arbitrum. If you're asking about like if there's like a way to, if there's like an NFT minter on Arbitrum for you to kind of upload a picture and have it minted. There's only one I'm familiar with. I think it's from Arbizar.io. By the way, this is financial advice, I should say. But in terms of like a fully fledged like NFT minter for you to mint your entire collection, not that I'm aware of currently. But if you're talking about something more like kind of more closely, I guess, related to like like us as like was like a project in the team, Daniel G and a couple, I guess, other engineers on our team are actually like kind of doing some research on NFT bridging to and from Arbitrum. I don't know, Daniel, you can probably speak more to that.
Yeah, I guess in short, yeah, I think the most important thing is what you said already, which is like, yes, you can do anything you can do on Ethereum on Arbitrum, which includes, creating and minting NFTs, and there is, an increasingly big NFT ecosystem within Arbitrum, which is very cool. Yeah, probably I think the most one of the fun little technical questions is NFT bridging. So essentially moving NFTs from layer 1 to layer 2 and so on. And a few projects out there have currently built NFT bridges. I wish I remember them by name, but also, you can look it up.
Composable Finance and Kevin DeFi, by the way.
Thank you, Hunter. Yes. And yeah, we are looking towards supporting NFT bridges in our canonical bridge. There's a lot of sort of open questions on what the ideal standards would be and what the use cases would be. The answers to those questions depend on how exactly we build it. We did a whole Twitter space on this topic that was kind of pretty wonky and in depth, and hopefully we recorded it. So if you're interested, maybe I can share that somehow, somewhere. It's on YouTube. Okay, great. Maybe I'll take up that link. But in short, yes, it's totally, already we have NFTs on Arbitrum. It's entirely possible and doable to build NFT bridges between chains. A few projects have done it, and we're sort of thinking about how best we want to do it.
Thank you so much. And the next question is from Yelena. She asked, community is important for the progress of a project. I agree. How many users are currently using the Arbitrum platform?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So I think, so in terms of like actual users, obviously it's going to depend on the day. I'm not sure if we actually have a good number for that internally, but in terms of like our community size, like Discord, I think our Discord's pushing like 50,000 people, which is definitely quite a lot. And I think our Twitter presence is roughly around like 190,000, closing that 200K mark, which is also great. And the really cool part about the Arbitrum community is that it's kind of funny because I tell people all the time, especially when we go to these career fairs, like Daniel G and I were actually just at the Harvard one in Boston, like over the weekend, that like people come to Arbitrum like not necessarily for like the tech alone or just to be on like like the layer 2 chain, but they come for the projects that are built on Arbitrum, like to join those communities and be involved there. So in a way, like like we have like great like interconnections between obviously like the people within the communities on our like within our ecosystem and within the dApps within our ecosystem as well. So it's honestly like a really cool kind of cross pollination thing that we kind of noticed kind of like rise up like the past couple of months, because for a while even like before I think I joined maybe a month or two before you actually like launched publicly, like we kind of went from a community of like just people who love the tech to now people who love tech plus all the degens and everyone else that see posting like the memes and all that stuff, which is also great, at least in my eyes.
No, yeah, it is very cool when people, like at these fairs or at events and conferences, and people come up to us and just want to talk about something they use on Arbitrum, because that is ultimately the point. So yeah, that is happening more and more. Very exciting.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank everyone who attended this and asked questions. And now my last question is for you. What is the biggest trend in DeFi now? NFTs, GameFi, whatever you think. And I will ask you, what is the biggest challenge in DeFi? Of course, your opinions.
I don't know. You want to get that one?
I think you should start with this one in terms of biggest trend.
Okay. I'll do the trend. I do the trend. You can do the challenge.
I'll do challenge. I got one. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the trend, I definitely think that like gaming is definitely the trend right now in DeFi. So like you had to actually kind of lead the charge like months ago, and then NFTs kind of has been the main kind of like focus the past couple of months. But in a really cool way, I think Arbitrum is actually leading like the current trend in like within DeFi, which really is like gaming. And the really cool thing about gaming is that it not only includes NFTs, but it also includes like DeFi itself, like lending, borrowing, staking, providing liquidity, all that stuff that you would normally do on like a regular kind of like boring interface. You can now do it like a gamified way with an NFT and somehow kind of earn yield that way. So if you are using Arbitrum right now, you definitely know this. I mean, there are a ton of games already in Arbitrum, including Bridge World. You have Smallverse, you have Cuddle Finance, Castle DAO, the Tales of Illyria just launched, Battlefly. Like, there's so many, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple as well, that you can literally kind of like onboard yourself via their token or their NFT and just like start relatively like playing some of these games. And it's definitely in its infancy currently, but the real innovation is actually happening on Arbitrum, and it's because of like all the like kind of community involvement that's going on. Like and I mentioned it earlier, just the fact that there are so many teams collaborating with each other and kind of cross pollinating their audience and community, that it makes for a really, really strong base for these teams to kind of build up and off of. and not necessarily have to rely so much on the capital coming in, but like pretty much almost being fueled by the community itself. And it's funny just to kind of throw one last thing in there that something else that's also being pioneered on Arbitrum is like the free mint. So like literally, like I'm more than positive up until this point, I mean, okay, this is gonna be a large claim, so if I'm wrong, you can definitely tell me. But I want to say like almost like half, if not more, of the NFTs that I've minted on Arbitrum have been free, completely free. Like you had to grind for a whitelist or whatever, but the point is that you didn't have to spend any ETH to get it. All you have to do is pay the gas fee, which is obviously negligible for the most part, and you get a free NFT. So if you haven't explored Arbitrum for NFTs or GameFi yet, like this is literally where like everything is kind of being led right now. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, so in my mind, currently the biggest challenge is probably privacy. I think for a while, scalability and privacy were like these two obstacles that had to be tackled. And scalability, I'm not going to say it's solved or anything like that. It'll be an ongoing challenge, but there's clearly been, I think for a while there was sort of this real push and to improve scalability solutions, both research on layer 1 and building on layer 2, and things moved quickly. I think there was like slight undertones of panic, but I think like scalability is like on its way. It's something we're working on, and I think it's like getting to be time that we have a similar sort of semi-panic mode about privacy, just because the sort of the what's the word I want, the status quo of privacy in the DeFi world is pretty bad, and I think it's those of us in the space can often just lose sight of this. But if you bring in a new user, onboard someone from the outside, there will be some point when they're just shocked to see whatever their the Etherscan page or the Arbiscan page of their address, and just to see that all of this activity is quite literally public. So the situation I think is it's very unlikely, and might not even be it might even literally be impossible that Ethereum itself layer 1 has becomes a privacy point, has built-in on-chain privacy. If that ever happens, it's far away. So I think we just need to like think more seriously about using application level privacy, and like shout out to the teams that are doing cool work on this, like Tornado Cash, like Aztec, and a number of others. These things are cool, but like we need to just sort of think about how to get these things more widely used and more directly integrated into the ecosystem. Arbitrum itself, it's basically, again, because it inherits very similar or the same models of Ethereum itself, which means it also sort of at the sort of protocol level inherits the same limitations. So it has the same level of privacy as Ethereum, which is to say on Arbitrum, by default, things are totally transparent. You can build these sorts of privacy solutions I mentioned on top of Arbitrum, and I would love to see more of that. So that's kind of what I hope to see in the coming year or years, is more sort of focus and talk, and ideally capital going towards privacy.
Great answers. Thank you so much. How about we end the AMA here? It was really great. Thank you, David. Thank you, Hunter, for your great answers, and of course for your time. Do you have anything to add?
No, yeah, I was going to say thank you, obviously, for having us. I actually went ahead and pinned something at the top of this AMA. It's a 4th edition of the Arbitrum Alpha. So if you aren't familiar with what's going on Arbitrum, you can go ahead and click on that above and quickly familiarize yourself.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
This was lots of fun. Thanks for having. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for participating. It was so informative and so much fun. See you soon in our next AMA. Bye. Thank you again.
Cheers.
Thank you.